Mr. Hanna,
Mr. Evans.
do you have the details of the mission prepared before we start recording?
I do.
Okay, so how about you tell me what was James Bond's assignment before we start?
On this mission, Bond is working towards getting revenge for Vesper's death, which leads him to stopping a fake environmentalist from extorting poor desert towns by stealing their water supply and selling it back at a high price.
And this is Quantum of Solace. And welcome to another fantastic mission of Bond Never Dies. I am your agent, Jeremy Evans, along with Travis Hanna.
Ba-da.
And we are now into Daniel Craig's second film, Quantum of Solace. This was a totally 180, I guess you would say. And after, talking about it for a little bit before recording, it kind of pulled a 180. It was a movie that, it had so much stuff going on, but it was still a disappointment compared to the first one that didn't have that much stuff going on per se, but it was still good. Would you agree or disagree with that?
No, I 100% agree. It was very difficult for me to watch this one. But compared to Casino Royale, I don't even feel like they belong on the same plane. It's hard to believe that both, this is supposed to be a continuation of Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you got to think that that's just a poker game mainly.
Yeah.
And this was still less exciting than that, even with all of the action they tried to cram in here.
Mm-hmm. And this is probably, would you say this is the most fast-paced Bond film we've seen per se?
It is definitely,
or definitely in the top. Or one of the top.
The thing is I think they were going so quick that they had to skip, they skipped around from scene to scene a lot, and it was just for little quick shots. You didn't really get a chance to develop a lot of, or they spent too much time in one scene where they could have taken more time in another.
And a lot of cuts, a lot of unnecessary cuts.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about too was there was a lot of combinations in this film based on, and we noticed this from Casino Royale, where there's definitely a lot of reference from the old ones put into this one. And in Quantum, we got a little bit of Goldfinger.
Oh yeah,
we got a little bit of License to Kill, and honestly, I would actually put Tomorrow Never Dies in there only because the fact that Tomorrow Never Dies still had a lot of action scenes, but the villain was still kind of weak. But at least the goal of the villain Tomorrow Never Dies had a more interesting purpose than the villain that we will be talking about in this episode. Because it's almost at the point where the villain in this one really felt like he didn't need to be there. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost in a way.
It's kind of hard to believe that he was a mastermind.
Right.
He's just a coward.
Yeah. He was a character where I have this idea, why is this guy coming after me? I don't understand kind of person. And he didn't really put up a fight or anything. He would always try to run away from the problem, like you said, a coward, and have everybody else come in and help him out. But that even wasn't that wasn't entertaining at all either, how they were trying to do that. You got a lot of great sceneries, I guess. There was a lot of locations. There was a lot of locations.
Yeah, it was, like I said, they went from place to place to place. Mm-hmm. But let's give us some substance.
So for people that don't know, Travis, since I want to say later down the Sean Connerys and moving further on, you would type up notes.
Yes.
For us. And we're reading off the notes just so he can help us out on top of we watch the movie to kind of make sure that we're seeing certain parts that are really important so we don't forget certain key things or something that stand out oh yeah, we forgot to add that. The reason I brought this up because Travis told me that, would you say this is one of your worst type ups for this one? Because there's just too much stuff was going on and unnecessary stuff that, when you talk, how did you feel about typing this one up?
I mean, normally they're between 3 and 5 pages, right? And I'm just trying to capture details that we might want to discuss or things that just stuck out, goofy scenes, some WTF moments, character names, and just kind of give a synopsis of what's happening in that scene. But this one is long because they kept switching around so much. Like, there's a lot of conversation that is short, and then they move on, like with Felix, right? Felix and his boss, they're on a plane. They're setting some stuff up that the CIA is working with a regime to get kickbacks, right? And then we don't hear from them for a while, and then we see them again, and they're just sitting in a room watching TV, waiting for something to happen. You know, and it's like, what is the point of that scene?
I think that's the point of this whole film. Like, what were we doing here? Why are we sitting here watching this and not understanding what's going on? And it really had no meaning. It was so fast paced that they threw the plot kind of out the window. But as we go through this mission, hopefully the listeners, if you're listening to this, of course, will maybe help us out and tell us what do you think the plot of this story is. So let's start with the opening, followed by, actually picks up right after the end of Casino Royale.
Right at the end. And it actually started out really strong. There was a great car chase. Bond's being followed in an Aston Martin. And, you know, they drive through some tunnels. They end up in a quarry. You know, nothing too showy here. It's really Bond just driving maneuvers and pulling his gun out and avoiding being shot. But like it's narrow drives, right? Like they're on the side of a mountain, and it's like a 2-lane highway where there's trucks. So he's trying to get away from the bad guys. He's trying not to wreck in all the cars in front of him. It's a pretty good chase scene. It's a pretty strong opening.
Yeah. This is the part where I started noticing, like, why is there so many cuts? Like, there's a lot of cuts. Like, one moment I don't even remember how Bond got a gun. Like, there were so many cuts. But even though, like, I like the scene still, you know, I can see a lot of people getting kind of confused. Like, how did we get to here to here? And so, so from there, let's see here. We're at. Oh, okay. Bond gets away from the other car and pulls the car over and opens the trunk to show Mr. White.
So for all those who may not have seen Casino Royale, Mr. White was a background villain that was actually the mastermind, or so we thought, which led to Vesper killing herself and totally ruining Bond.
Yeah.
And this is literally picking up. Casino Royale ends with him confronting Mr. White and shooting him in the leg. And this one starts with him pulling him out of a trunk and getting ready to be questioned by MI6.
Yeah. And then we go right into our intro. And
it's kind of boring.
It is boring.
It's sand dunes and blue backgrounds. Grayish background.
It's nighttime that becomes day. It is not a good follow-up to Casino Royales, where, you know, they put a little more effort into this one. The song is Alicia Keys with the guitarist Jack White from the White Stripes. And even the song was kind of a little lackluster for me. My theory still is, like, if I don't really like the intro or the music, I don't know if I'm going to really like the film. But back to the intro. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's mainly desert, and then it goes to the sky, and then you start slowly seeing, I guess you would say, it's forming a globe, like a globe of the Earth per se. But, like, I don't know, what would you call that? Like, with all a grid?
It's like a wireframe. So if you were to look at a globe, and you would look at the timelines and the equator, and how they curve around the globe. You know, that's what we're looking at. So it's that framework just kind of in the background with sand dunes in front of it. And then occasionally a sand dune is a naked woman. And then occasionally a woman turns into a sand dune. Like, it's really not that appealing.
Yeah, and Bond just walks in a lot of this. He just walks in the desert. Like there's not like I think maybe there was a part he like gets in the quick like he falls into the sand, I guess, you know. But like other than that, I mean, name a Bond that he's not falling from something, right? He's always falling into something. But yeah, it was just there's not really much to tell because there's really not anything in here. This is probably the most lackluster intro. It's up there. It's up there. Probably one of the most boring ones up there. So
well, and really, other than the setting for where this takes place, this intro has really nothing to do with anything that has to do with this movie.
yeah,
Like normally, you know, like Casino Royale, there's suits of cards because they're playing in a poker match, right? And the spades and the clubs and the diamonds are all part of it. This one, there's an eco-terrorist who's trying to extort people with water, and I didn't see any water.
no, and
In the opening, I didn't see. I don't even really know why they call it Quantum of Solace.
that's what I was gonna get at. Like, it's almost at the point where it sounds cool. Let's go with that more than like, well, what is that? And so, but let's go ahead and get right to the next part, and that brings us into actually the desert with sand dunes. Oh no, not desert sand dunes. Sorry, Bond drops off Mr. White at the meet with him. Sorry.
Right. So, so this is where we realize that there's actually another organization that MI6 doesn't know about, and Mr. White is working with them, and Mr. White actually kind of laughs at them and says, "You don't know who we are? Like we're always thinking that you guys are tracking us, and you don't even know we exist."
Yeah,
You know, which is like, oh dang.
I like that. I like that.
At the same time, M is kind of informing Bond about Vesper and her boyfriend, the one that was so in Casino Royale, Vesper was being extorted because her boyfriend was captured, and so she was going to hand over the winnings from the casino game or from the poker game to the organization to save her boyfriend. M says that they found a body that matches the description of the boyfriend, but it was all cut up. And after DNA testing, they found that it really wasn't the boyfriend. And so
She got played.
yeah, she got played. And Bond is still kind of looking for closure after Vesper killed herself for betraying him. And all this is taking place at a horse track. And I want to say it's in Italy, but
Sure.
they never showed a location for this. And so essentially, Mr. White tells them that they have agents everywhere. And at that moment, an MI6 agent starts shooting at M and Bond.
Yeah, which that was kind of cool and unexpected. I really like that. He goes by the name of Mitchell, if I'm correct. Yeah.
But you know, the weird part is if they have people infiltrating MI6, how does they not know that MI6 doesn't know about them?
I don't know. Apparently, you know, remember this is like, you know, the beginning, so maybe they're learning as they go. That's my only theory about that.
Yeah.
And so after Mitchell shoots Bond and shoots M, Bond. Oh no, he didn't shoot. No, he didn't shoot Bond. He shot another another agent. Then shot M. Bond tries to you know, take care of the situation. Ends up chasing Mitchell. I guess through a bunch of corridors and stuff as they're trying to escape, because I guess they're like under where the horse tracks are. I guess. Would you say are they under there?
Yeah. So the end of Casino Royale, they're in.
Right. I don't know.
They're in Italy.
Yeah.
Like
a secret headquarters.
So yeah, I'm assuming it's just a secret place they know about in Italy.
Because we know that in the history of the Bond series, we don't know exactly where all their hideouts are. Like they have so many. You know, they had some MI6 in Scotland. They had some down in different parts of the world. So I guess maybe this is just another one off their list that they have. And so, but anyways, Bond ends up chasing him out in the middle of the public while Mitchell is running through a crowd of people like taking pictures, filming, and whatnot. And as he was getting closer, Mitchell went ahead and shot just a random person to kind of slow Bond down. and Mitchell managed to escape and running across the tracks, and Bond is still in pursuit of him. Now, at this point here, they're slowly like making their way up to a bell tower, and so as Mitchell's pushing people out in his way down the stairs and everything like that, when Bond caught up with him, almost they're at the top of this bell tower, and from there, I guess like I want to say, was it Mitchell or Bond that rang the bell? I think it was Bond.
It was Bond.
Yeah, Bond rang the bell, so I guess so he couldn't hear him. What led to
yeah, because they're like maintenancing the bell tower, so there's like a crane and some stones on the inside, and so him and Bond and Mitchell are like fighting each other, and they eventually like both drop their guns, so they're fist fighting, and then they're trying to get back to their guns. One is up high, one is on the ground. Bond ends up hanging by one leg because a rope gets tied around it. But Bond ends up prevailing and killing Mitchell, which is kind of the theme. M gets mad at Bond a lot in this for killing people, and it's like Bond should probably try to keep them alive for questioning before he kills them.
So before we move on, let me ask you this: how did you feel about the first chase scene? Because once again, we're getting introduced with some pretty good parkour again since the Casino Royale. How did you feel about that overall?
Oh, it's definitely not parkour, but it's an exciting chase scene.
Okay.
You know, we just had a car chase, and here we are. We're on foot, so you know things seem up and up. Okay. You know, and then they start to decline.
You know, it would have been awesome if Mitchell was also a number. He was a 00?
Oh, you think like
no, I'm not saying he is. I'm saying it would have been cool,
right? Like Trevelyan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that'd be really cool, even if he has a spark one, because all the 00s in the series always became like mysterious. Either they're dead, or they left some information, or Bond has to find. You know what I mean? And 006, he was the only one that we actually learned the most out of from GoldenEye that actually like went AWOL or went rogue. So it would have been cool, just a little snippet here to show like, hey, this is 004 Mitchell, and he actually worked his way up to be a 00, and then he just portrays it right. That would just been a really cool moment for me, and that would show that Bond doesn't know his surrounding, because Bond is still learning, So, anyways, as we continue, Bond is trying to make his little, I guess you could say, his getaway after the incident. He's trying to return back to, the interrogation area where, M was. But during that time, too, Mr. White got shot again. Before that, we forgot to mention it. But when Bond returns back, he actually find out that, Mr. White is gone.
Right.
And so it leads them to London.
Right. So they go back to London, and M is talking with Bond, and she is mad because Mitchell was had been working for her for 6 years, and they didn't know that he was a double agent. Mm-hmm. And they're like, it's something they should have caught. So M was just stunned that nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but that they did find there was money linked from him to Le Chiffre, who was the bad guy in Casino Royale, and that a lot of the Chiffre's money was actually deposited into a bank account that belongs to a Mr. Slate, and the guy is hanging out in Haiti. So M sends Bond to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, to track down Mr. Slate. And so Bond makes it to his hotel room, and going back to M is kind of mad that he just kills people so easily. Mr. Slate and him never even speak. It's just they fight, and then Bond ends up killing him.
Which is like, it's almost at the point like we get it. Bond he kills and doesn't ask questions, but at the same time, it's more like it's kind of getting kind of old at this point. Fights, but another fight scene right off the bat, and I wish that there was a little more interrogation before a fight scene, but it's whatever. So this fight scene became more of grabbing objects around the room and thrashing. Ends up throwing him out the window, ends up, didn't he, I think he stabbed him right in the neck with like these scissors that Slate had, and then he stabbed him right in the leg. And I guess you could say Mr. Slate bled out, or I guess.
Yeah, because he's holding his neck, so he probably got an artery and just bleeds out.
Yeah.
And then Bond takes his hotel key, and really he gets lucky because he's walking downstairs, and as he's leaving, he asks the front counter lady if there was any mail, and she's like, "Oh, just the briefcase that was left before, or that you had us hold for that room number. Do you want us to keep holding it?" And he's like, "No, I'll take it." And so he takes it and he walks outside, and that's where we meet the Bond girl, Camille.
And the first word she says is, "Get in."
Yeah, so it's like, how did she know to be there at that time? Like, this is that moving too quickly.
Right.
Like, how does she know who's supposed to be outside? If Mr. Slate was up in his room, was she just waiting for some guy to walk out?
Right.
With the
It would
briefcase?
have been better if we saw her, like, as Bond arrived at that hotel, if we saw her in a distance, kind of looking around the corner, or kind of like, who's this guy? Just to show that she was there first, but Bond just came in and interrupt everything because she was going to go after Mr. Slate or something like that. But they just never cared to show that. But as they're driving off, of course, they're being followed by a gentleman in a motorcycle.
Yep.
And so this leads into a giant chase scene.
Well, it's not really.
Not really a giant chase scene. That's me. I'm overselling it here. It becomes just like a really more like kind of like a little getaway, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess.
And Bond starts going through the briefcase and finds out that he's actually supposed to kill Camille.
Mm-hmm.
Which she kind of freaks out about, and Bond gets out of the car, or she pulls a gun on Bond.
Yeah,
and Bond gets out of the car, and she drives off, and the dude on the motorcycle comes up to Bond and is like, "You were supposed to kill her." And so I'm like, does nobody know who they're supposed to meet with?
Right. Like, I guess, like, wait, I'm sorry. Okay, you're telling me here that this guy either never seen what Mr. Slate looks like, or he's just assuming.
Right.
But I guess. And so, but he kicks him out the motorcycle. He grabs the motorcycle and he's following, giving information to M while he's following Camille about, Mr. Slate's dead. She's pissed. Let's move on. And during that part, he arrives at the docks.
Yeah. And at the docks, Camille walks through a gated area, and we actually meet the quote-unquote villain of the movie. His name is Dominic.
Dominic Green, right?
Yeah, Dominic Green. Mm-hmm. And he's a little surprised that Camille is still alive and is trying to play it off. And Camille is, of course, pissed because he was going to have her killed. And so Dominic takes her outside to the docks and has her look down in the water, and there's a dead body staring up. And he's just kind of like, was he giving out information? Were you giving out information? They have a big conversation about trust.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond gives the gate guard his number. It's a business card. It says Universal Exports.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it to see if it's a legit business, and it goes to a voicemail for Universal Exports.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really odd scene. So Bond is basically just waiting for Camille. And while he's out there waiting, Dominic Green is meeting with this General Medrano. I'm sorry,
mm-hmm.
General Medrano, and they're talking about toppling the government, and so that Medrano can take over. So it's like a Castro situation.
Now, for the listeners, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong here, is Camille and the General, are they both from Bolivia?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
And they're trying to overthrow the top of the government in Bolivia so that he can take over.
Okay.
And Mr. Green is going to help him do that.
Okay. And then I guess you could say that the general was also Dominic gives Camille to the general to tell him to kill her when he's done. So basically the general was eyeing her. Like he's like, oh, she's cute, I want her.
Right.
And then Dominic was like, yeah, sure, take her. But don't bring her back. Like, just kill her off. Like when you're done, you know.
He's like, I already tried to kill her, but it didn't work out. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So
wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So while that's happening, Bond is kind of motorcycling around the area, kind of trying to get a better view of like what's going on because he can't see Camille. And so as they get on the boat, Bond is slowly kind of like, I guess you could say hopping boats, like little boats, trying to get like, he motorcycles onto a boat. I get. Did he? Yeah. He does that. And then he slowly gets off the boat and he starts hopping boat to boat to boat to catch up with Camille and the general.
Right.
And I don't know why Camille decided to go with the general.
So Camille wants to kill the general. And
I guess that's the reason why she volunteered. Okay.
Right. We'll find out later why.
Yeah.
But Bond knows that she's in trouble, so he's going after her. And right when she's about to make her move on the general, Bond actually tackles her off of her boat and onto another boat, which leads to a boat chase.
Mm-hmm. And so they're arguing back and forth. There's also this scene here reminds me of the Living.
Daylight.
No, it's License to Kill.
License to Kill.
Yeah, I mean, you know the part where the bar scene, and they end up going on a boat, and kind of arguing and fighting a little bit. This kind of reminds me of that. But they're arguing about it so much that I want to say Camille got knocked out, or she got pushed down or something like that, or he told her just to get down. Somewhere she was end up on the bottom of the boat, like just out of the way, so Bond can continue, riding his boat.
Escaping?
Yeah, escaping. And I don't know why this boat does not look like it would be fast enough to outdo those other boats.
No, it's a rickety boat with a motor on it. Like it's literally wood.
Yeah.
And really, this chase isn't even that great.
Mm-hmm.
They Camille like takes out a couple of guys when Bond gets close.
Mm-hmm.
They fight over the steering wheel a little bit, and then she does get knocked out.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
And then like Bond just kind of they both just kind of get away.
Right.
It's
interesting because it's another scene to me that was kind of forced. It's
yes.
like could we done this part without an action scene? Yes, we could have. But the fact that like they decided to force it in here, it would have been more interesting to have it where maybe Camille's already on the boat where the general is, and then maybe Bond jumps on the boat and tries to save her. Then that would have been probably better than this giant speedboat with, once again, so many cuts. It's almost like the boat scene's not really that long. It's just a lot of cuts that made it more interesting, I guess. Does that make sense?
No, 100%.
Yeah. So,
so they get away, and then they go to Bond goes to an opera.
don't forget he drops her off. When they made it on land, he drops her off to a guy like, "Hey, she's seasick. Take care of her."
Right.
And then when he gets into the car, he's trying to get some information of where he needs to go next.
You're right.
Yeah.
So M calls the CIA about Dominic, but the CIA says they aren't interested, and that's Felix and his boss, who is over Bolivia, and we find out that he's actually working with Dominic for kickbacks, and so it's not really in his best interests to help MI6. And M catches on to this. Why would they transfer her to a director if they weren't interested?
Right.
There wouldn't be a director, right?
Right.
So Felix looks like he is very. He doesn't like what's going on, but
he looks like he don't want to be there. He is just like, why am I here?
He can't say anything because that's his boss.
Now I didn't know this. I didn't know this was the actor that played the boss. He's the same actor that did Stranger Things.
Yes.
When I watched this was way before Stranger Things, so I just didn't put two and two together.
Right. He was the sheriff. In
Yeah,
Things.
yeah. So it was funny. It's like, oh, okay. That was a small part for him, I guess. One thing that's disappointing, though, is we're slowly getting Dominic Green's little right-hand man, and it's disappointing that he's really just a quiet guy. He's like a silent guy that really just there again, just being there. It's kind of a little bit of a missed opportunity to help build him, because when we watch this movie, Dominic is not that strong, and it would have been nice if they had the right-hand man help out so that they can maybe find a way to be strong together, but they just never did it. And so
yeah, that would have been cool. But in this, they get a picture of Bond, and they're asking, Dominic and his guy are asking CIA if they know who that is. Felix's boss throws him the phone. It's a flip phone because it's like 2006. And he's like, no, I don't know who that is. And Felix's boss is like, that's James Bond. He's a British spy. And Felix is looking at him a little stunned, like, if you knew, why did you ask me?
right.
You know? So
I think he was trying to test him.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're in Belize or Bolivia.
No, they're in Austria.
Oh, Austria.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in Austria.
So Dominic is actually on his way to an opera.
Mm-hmm.
And or it's a gala. So everyone's in tuxedos, and Bond is curious about these gift bags that are being handed out. He notices some people are getting stuff from off the table, and some people are getting stuff from under the table. So he takes it upon himself to steal a tuxedo and to
That bathroom scene is hilarious.
steal one of the gift bags that came from under a table,
Mm-hmm.
which comes with a pin that's in the shape of a letter Q and an earpiece. And essentially, there is a meeting happening at the opera where people are discussing a pipeline.
I need to stop for a second.
Okay.
I need to ask you: Is Bond that strong?
That you can rip off a door handle?
Yes.
It depends on how well that door handle's made.
Okay. Do you think?
I think I could rip one off. Not just like standing over it with one hand,
Okay.
but
Okay. I know I can't, but I'm just kind of curious. The way they portray it, like, that easy, huh? Okay. Go on. I'm sorry.
that's okay. So Bond is listening into the whole thing, and he essentially cuts into the conversation, and people start freaking out and getting up and leaving
Why did they do that? That made no sense to me. It was like,
because they don't want to be there.
yeah.
What I'm interested in, how do they know it wasn't one of their people?
I don't know
Bond's
either.
kind of smarted off, but my first thought wouldn't be that we were infiltrated.
Right. I guess because that gave Bond a chance to take pictures of everybody that was standing up that were agents, except for one person, and that was Mr. White. Mr. White was the only one that kind of still sat there. And so, but the conversation they were having was like about like was it the oil or the water? Yeah, oil.
Pipeline.
Yeah. And so from there, everybody's getting up and leaving. Bond's taking pictures and stuff, and he send them to
MI6?
Yeah, he sent them MI6 to be identified and whatnot. And then what happens next?
So Dominic sees Bond and they fight in like a weird montage. Like,
Yeah, I don't like this.
no,
I don't like this because there's music played over it during the same time where this opera is going on, and it just wasn't working for me. It just was
no,
not.
and it's like there's scenes where Bond's being shot at, and he's like in a banquet hall,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's in a kitchen, and he takes out a guy, and then it cuts to him taking out another guy. Like, it's really, really cut weird.
Yeah, just wasn't a big fan of that, and so it leads Bond to I guess is it a roof? I want to say, yeah, it was a roof of the building where he's talking. He has a gun to point to one of the agents or one of the people that was working under Dominic.
Right.
And so they are now at the top. He has them at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Dominic and his right-hand man were getting in the car to get ready to leave. And due to a certain situation, Bond ends up kind of getting a quarrel with him, and the guy ends up falling off the ledge onto the car. And so Dominic, was a little irritated. So he tells his driver to, get him out of the way. He shoots him. They push him off, and they drive off. And we find out through a phone call to M, because M is at her home.
Right.
And she's getting called by MI6 about, what's going on. And we find out that agent was
he was actually a British intel person.
Yeah.
And that he had been tracking Dominic, and MI6 believes that Bond shot and killed him.
Right.
When in reality, the dude got up off the car and Dominic's guy shot and killed him.
Right. My question is too, did they know about, they knew about him, but they didn't care to inform him?
Right.
Well, why did he not say, hey, there's a guy on the inside, keep an eye on him? He could have helped him out or something. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah. And this is also kind of a weird, like, they cancel all of Bond's cards and try to take away his money so he can't go anywhere, so they can catch up to him and bring him back.
Yeah, because he's just not learning. And this is where it kind of gets to that license to kill feel, where he's on his own now.
And so he's trying to purchase a plane ticket to go to Bolivia, but his card is declined. And the lady at the front counter, like, he informs her that she's about to get a phone call, and like said, if you'll tell them I went to Egypt, I would appreciate it. And she's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Yeah. And then she gets the phone call, and then we go straight to
I
Italy.
Assumed it was Italy.
Yeah.
But Bond is catching back up with Mathis. And Mathis is a character from Casino Royale. And Mathis is now retired. And Bond is asking for help to get to Bolivia because Mathis has connections.
Mm-hmm.
And he invites Mathis to go with him, and Mathis is just like, yeah, okay.
Now, I didn't know he got tortured, because he was mentioning, like, you took me in and you guys tortured me and whatnot. I didn't know.
Well, they thought that he was working with Le Chiffre.
Yeah.
And that he was trying to kill Bond.
Yeah.
And they found out that that wasn't the case.
Right. So, like you said, Mathis is going to help Bond track down these gentlemen and whatnot. He's the only one that can kind of get him in the inside, because he actually knows a lot of people. Mathis knows a lot of people, including a general there, another general of whatnot. And they end up going, heading to Bolivia.
Yeah, they get on a plane and they go to Bolivia. And then on the plane, Bond can't sleep, and he's drinking his Vespa Martini that he created in Casino Royale.
Mm-hmm.
And Mathis is talking to him and basically saying, let the past die with the past. It's time for you to move on, type stuff.
It would have been funny if the inside joke from the first one would have been funny. He says, "Did you check if that was poison or not?"
Oh, right.
Yeah, that would have been a really funny thing. So at the airport, he gets introduced by a new person that is there to bring Bond back, and her name goes by the name of Strawberry Fields.
Except she doesn't ever say her first name.
So you put Strawberry in there for?
Well, it is
Strawberry.
It is Strawberry Fields.
It's just
but she never says her first name. She just says Fields.
Oh, okay. I see.
But when you look it up, it's Strawberry Fields.
Okay. I guess they just roll with it because her hair is kind of looking strawberry-ish.
She's a redhead.
Yeah.
And it's a Beatles song, so sure, why not?
Right. So she's basically there to bring Bond back, and after finding out that they can't head out till the next day, they have the whole night. So Bond and Strawberry or Miss Fields and Mathis are trying to find a hotel. Fields has this one place. Bond refused it and said, let's go to a better place. And they go to this nice place. Really, it's a really nice hotel. It's freaking fancy,
it's like
man.
White marble, white and black marble. Bond walks in and just tells him what he wants,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, okay."
And so they make it into the room, and Bond does what he's good at, of course. He is actually, it's funny because Miss Fields, I don't know why, but she just started having a big change when she walked in there. It's like, man, this is fancy. She's just getting really she's really feeling herself. And so Bond just kind of goes in the next room and say, hey, can you help me see how this stuff works in here and whatnot? She says, sure. And of course, at the end of it all, Bond ends up bonding it.
Yeah.
So, and she ends up talking about I can't believe that just happened. Bond just is like, no regrets.
Right. And how he did it was so lame. He was all like, I can't find the stationery.
That's what it is.
Can you come help me?
Right.
And then, after a while, Mathis comes back and brings an invitation to a party for Bond, so that they can go get more information on Dominic.
Oh, she is so forced in this story. It's almost because you find out through some information that the actual character Camille, she's a different Bond girl in this film. So the only way to get a sex scene in here, they had to bring this character in so Bond can get something in there because it's part of the requirement. Bond has to be tapping something before the end of the movie. So
they're at the party, and it's a fundraiser for helping the ecosystem. And Mr. Green is giving this speech about how important it is for everyone to donate so that they can save the planet and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, we all know it's bogus.
Right.
And of course, so does Bond. But while he is mingling after his speech, Camille shows back up. And she is talking about how his organizations have done the opposite.
She put him on blast.
Of what they've actually claimed to do. Mm-hmm. And he almost kills her by pushing her off of...
Yeah, he was about to choke her out and kill her.
And Bond actually intervened and spoke up. And they talked for a minute. And...
ends up leaving and stuff, and they were going to have a guy track her, but Miss Fields was coming up at the same time and actually tripped one of the guys. He's actually his right-hand man. He trips. And Bond gets away in a car, and they drive off. No chase scene. Just drive off.
Bond essentially wants Camille to show him what Dominic has been working on so that he can figure out what he's trying to do.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden he gets pulled over by a couple of policemen.
Yeah.
And they tell him to, the usual. But Bond went ahead and kind of filled in the couple of steps. He got out of the car and he just walks towards them. And he said, can you open up your trunk? He opens up his trunk. And it happens to be Mathis. Mathis was knocked out. And right when they were about to pull the trigger, Bond basically used Mathis as a bullet shield.
Yeah. And this is actually where Mathis ends up dying. And he's asking Bond not to leave him alone.
Hold him to his last moments.
And he starts talking about Vesper and moving on and that kind of thing. And Bond, after he dies, ends up throwing Mathis's body into a trash can and taking his money.
Mm-hmm.
It's an endearing scene, kind of.
Yeah, but at the same time, too, this would have been more endearing if you didn't have so many other deaths on the way there. Right. Bond made so many mistakes at the point well, this is nothing special, and I don't really feel for him because I expect it. I expect Bond to get someone else killed again. And so, but that's not it. But we are going to pause this mission for a minute and hit you with a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to hit that second half. We're going to hit it hard.
Bam.
Yeah. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Jeremy, a.k.a. the In-Game Boss.
And this is Jerron, a.k.a. the Evil of Aku.
And I want to tell you about a show as part of the In-Game Boss program network called the In-Game Boss Podcast.
It's a podcast about fun topics and questions that challenge the listeners and each other.
And we are on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other listening services.
But don't forget to subscribe to social media, Facebook and Twitter.
So come by and enjoy the show. And welcome back to the mission. I am Jeremy Evans, of course, along with Travis Hanna. And it's time. Oh, sorry. I feel like I interrupted you. Okay, so after the death of Mathis, it's time to head to the desert where they're still on this voyage to get to the location that Camille was talking about, or he wanted Camille to show him.
Correct.
Yeah. So this led them to making a deal with a guy that had a plane and them, to get there quicker. So they're on this plane, trying to look on the map to figure out where to go. And of course, some planes came and interrupt the action.
Right, a helicopter with some rockets and guns and a jet plane.
So this kind of was an interesting action scene, only because the fact that I don't understand why Camille in this scene had to get up. So Camille gets up and she's heading to the back. I don't know why, and I don't know if there was any explanation at all. While Bond is trying really hard to dodge these fighter jets and helicopters chasing after him.
Right.
Do you have any explanation behind that at all?
No, except maybe she does eventually have a parachute on, so maybe it was to put the parachute on. But before all this, they find out that there's water in the desert where Dominic is planning on developing or whatever he's going to do. There's water, and everyone is there's a drought going on. So as soon as they discover that, this jet and this helicopter show up, and there's a chase that ensues, and Camille goes to put a parachute on while Bond is trying to fend off the fighter jet and the helicopter. And eventually, the jet shoots out one of his engines, so it's smoking, and Bond uses that to help make sure the jet can't see. And so eventually, the jet gets underneath his plane, and Bond just kind of runs him down into the mountainside and destroys him. And then the helicopter shows up, and Bond takes the plane straight up into the air until it stalls out. And then he and Camille jump out of the airplane. She's got a parachute on, and he does not.
Yeah.
And they both end up surviving.
Yeah, they end up landing right in this crevice, right?
Right.
And they hit the ground pretty hard. Like they got up after it was nothing. But I personally, you might have to wake me up because
right.
Yeah, I would have been knocked out. It was not a soft landing. Even with the parachute, they were still going down with so much force. It just felt like a kind of hit, not more of And so, of course, they make it down. And then we start learning a little bit more information about Camille and why is she so determined to get to green and all this. And go ahead.
Right before that, though, M has a meeting with her boss.
Okay.
And her boss basically says, Bond needs to be brought back in. I'm a little disappointed you haven't already done so. If we're going after green, then we need evidence. But at the same time, most of the people we deal with are bad people. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be around. So M kind of is like, well, that's disconcerting.
Right?
Right? So
why am I here? I was like, right.
So then it cuts to Camille and Bond, and we find out that Camille's family was killed by General Medrano, and the house that they lived in was burned with her inside, and that she's vowing revenge on Medrano for killing her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bond figures out that Dominic wants the water. And Camille and Bond walk from where they landed to the small town where everyone is trying to get water, but there is none. And instead of just saying, hey, there's some water in that direction, they get on a bus and leave.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Selfish.
So they get back to their hotel, and Fields has left Bond a note saying run. And so Bond is very suspicious and goes up to the room, and M is there. And M takes Bond into custody, but not before showing him Fields' body, and she has been drowned by oil. Like her whole body is covered in oil.
Explain that scene. Go ahead. Explain this whole situation. We had this talk.
It's a white hotel room with a woman who's covered in black oil on a white comforter, and there's no drag marks, there's no stains except for what's on the bed. And it's like, was she drowned by oil in the hotel room? Or, I mean, how did they get her there after drowning her? It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's a cool looking scene, and
dedicated to Goldfinger.
And we believe it's an homage to Goldfinger with the woman who was covered in gold.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a weird scene. So anyway, Bond gets taken into custody. On the elevator, he takes out the guys that are supposed to be taking him back to MI6.
Worst agents ever.
And Bond confronts him and basically says he's going after Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
And M is a little stunned, actually, that he even showed back up, and Bond essentially escapes.
It's almost like a respect thing. It's like, look, I just want you to know that you can't stop me. I'm going to go do this.
Right. And
so you either with me or you're against me.
And so Camille is outside in the car waiting for him, and they drive off.
Right. And it's funny, too, because she does, like, almost the exact same scene. She drives up. She's like, get in.
Right.
And so, meanwhile, there's a bit of conversation with the CIA with Mr. Felix.
And Mr. Beam.
Mr. Bean. It'd be funny if they actually cast a guy that played Mr. Bean in the other one.
Especially because he played Felix in another Bond film.
That's hilarious.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So basically Bond calls and he's talking to Felix, and they agree to meet at this bar. And Bond questioned Felix, and Felix kind of tips off Bond that they're coming after him at the bar, and that Felix doesn't let on that he's disgusted about what the Americans are doing in Bolivia.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond is kind of criticizing him for it.
Right.
But basically, Felix is mainly there to tell him, hey, they're going to come for you, and that in the desert, Medrano has a place, or Mr. Green has a place. And so Bond gets out of the bar, and they head to the desert base, basically.
So this is where now Camille and Bond are getting prepared for, get ready to, infiltrate the home or the base or whatever you want to call it, where, the General Medrano and Dominic Green is. Because you can see them having a conversation. Also, the general that Mathis introduced Bond to earlier on at the party back in Austria. Mm-hmm. And so he's there, and basically they're just talking about making deals and stuff. Now, one of the interesting things about this scene while they were talking is there was a woman that was coming in to serve drinks and stuff, and of course Medrano was like, I want her, send her to my room later, kind of thing.
Right.
And we'll tell you why that's important later. But while everything was going on, Dominic made it inside and everything, getting ready to meet up. But one of the things was Bond and Camille had a conversation, and Bond was basically giving her a tip about, because basically he's trying to get her prepared. You're about to go after about to try to kill the person that destroyed your whole family and all this stuff and left you in a burning fire. So he's basically saying that and you can agree with me or disagree with Travis, but basically he was trying to tell her, like, lose all emotion, take the shot, worry about the aftermath later. Like, get in, do what you need to do, and get out.
Right. Don't think about it too much.
Yeah. And so, so from there.
So yeah.
Go ahead.
Dominic, Mr. Green, pays off the first general that was friends with Mathis, and they leave. Madrano wants his money, but part of their deal is that Dominic's going to get that area of desert that has the water in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so before he gives Madrano the money, Dominic says you need to sign the paperwork first. And then after he signs the paperwork, Dominic says, all right, this is where all the water is. If your people want water, you got to pay this price. So he's basically extorting them for water.
Mm-hmm.
And Madrano begrudgingly agrees. He gets his money. Dominic is trying to leave, and that's when Bond and Camille infiltrate. And
I guess you can see. You could say that Camille came from the top. So
right, she like came over the roof.
Yeah, into a window. Yeah, and Bond just went in like Bond does, loud and proud.
Yeah.
And as one of the generals was driving out, the one that already got paid and left, Bond jumped on the car, and then he had a shootout started among the cars. And Bond did something smart that I never thought of, and that's when, like, while they were shooting a car to car, he just ducks down and shoots everybody's legs. I'm like,
yeah,
well, that's just smart, isn't it? I was like, good for him. Meanwhile, Camille is making her way to the general, and during that time, the general is actually trying to like rape the girl that we mentioned that was inside serving drinks and stuff.
Right.
And she's just crying and panicking and stuff. So, Bond is making his way back to meet up with Camille and whatnot. But Camille went ahead and made a move to go in and fight General. Now, while that's going on, explosions are going and everything. Bond's leaving behind. But that leads him to fight with Mr. Green.
Right.
So now we have two fights going on at once. And
a fire.
Yeah, and a fire explosion going all around the place. Also, one funny part was, before the fight, Green actually saw Bond fight, was chasing him, and he got enough time where he told his henchman, the guy that we mentioned that, like, he's just there to be there. Well, he finally gets a moment, and he tells him to stand right here and hold this gun up. And, like, when Bond comes around the corner, you shoot him. Well, that didn't work out because Dominic noticed that explosions were coming. He runs off, and his henchman gets blown up into the explosion. Uh-huh. Yeah, you remember that part? Yeah. And then Bond's chasing after him. And then this is where we get the final duo fight. We have Camille against the General, and we get Green versus Bond. So let's go ahead and talk about Camille and the General. So they basically were just like wrestling around. She loses the gun and whatnot. He's like basically almost like choking her out and all that. She managed to get the gun and shoots him and kill him. And at that point, the girl, she ends up leaving, getting out in time before explosions started getting worse. And Camille is stuck in that room at that time.
Right. And so the fire, like, there's a fire happening. So it's like when she was a little girl.
Right.
It's like she got Madrano, but now she's a little terrified because she's having flashbacks when she was a child.
Yeah. So she is now, at that point, sitting in a corner, like, holding her legs and it's almost the exact same scene you would see in Casino Royale with Vesper in the shower. That's how she's looking, but all fire around her. Meanwhile, we get the fight that, well, it's a bit of disappointment. So we have Dominic Green and Bond fighting, and let's be honest here. Dominic Green's not a fighter. No. He's been a coward this whole time, and he doesn't know how to fight. So what he does is he gets an axe. And it's one of those, like, emergency axe that you would see on a wall in case of fire or anything like that. So you would say you would use it, like, to bash through a door so you can hurry up and escape or something like that. So he wrestles with Bond a little bit, and then he gets the axe and fight him. What's disappointing about this fight is this shouldn't have been no contest for Bond to take him down. Actually, this fight should have been done in 2 minutes. But they dragged it out, where Bond is actually hanging on the edge of one rail. He managed to get off and then had Dominic down on that rail, and he's holding him by the hair because Bond is at this point where he's like, okay, I have let everybody die around me. This is my chance to actually, like, have him and, like, interrogate him or whatever he wants to do. So what does he do? He doesn't kill him. He gets him.
Right.
Yeah, he manages to get him. I think he knocked him out, and then he went to go.
Well, he drove him out to the middle of the desert.
before going back to get Camille.
Yeah.
No. He let him go. He started walking out in the desert.
Right, and he tells Camille, like, stay here. And then the next scene is him.
Oh, no. Before that. Because we got to talk about how they got out before that.
Oh,
so
okay.
remember, he bring him up, but Bond went to go get Camille. Dominic escaped at that time. So Bond...
Yeah, which was really weird, too. 'Cause
Yeah.
Dominic got far.
Yes. So Bond managed to get through the door and help try to save Camille, and they're trapped in the fire big time. But then they notice something, I guess, across the way that can help explode the wall. So they explode this wall, and they manage to escape.
Right.
Now, out in the distance, they see Green walking out in the desert, and then that's when they go get the car, and then they go grab him, and they went further out in the desert. Just Bond alone. Camille, I guess she stayed behind. And so he grabs Green. They drive out in the middle of the desert. He drops him off, and he just says, "This is it for you." And he said, "You might be thirsty, so here, take this." And what was it, Travis?
Motor oil.
That's pretty gangster. So after that, I believe that he meets up with M. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so,
Well, not yet.
Okay.
It actually cuts to Russia, Kazan, Russia,
okay.
and Bond is waiting in an apartment in the dark.
Oh, before that too, and just as a short bit, he drops Camille off, and her mission is done. That's it. I forgot to tell you that. Yeah, after all that, he drops Camille off, and she's done everything. So she's done. So now we go straight into to Russia.
Right, and we find out that Bond is actually in the apartment of Vesper's boyfriend, and that he's not dead, and that he actually,
he does this for a living.
yes, he works as a, double agent isn't the right word, but he gets women to fall in love with him, and then he gets quote unquote kidnapped by organizations,
Right.
and the women that he's fallen in love with are then blackmailed
Right.
to pay a ransom of some kind. So
It's almost like he's a poser.
it's probably like women of
yeah.
status, and then anything that they can be extorted for, they do.
Right.
And in this case, we actually, the girl that's with him is Kate from Castle.
Okay.
Stana Katic. So if anybody who's a fan of Castle, it's
Who was
her.
the star of that show, by the way?
Huh?
Castle. Like, who's the star of the show?
Oh,
I want to say, isn't it that the actor from Firefly?
Nathan Fillion.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right.
So she actually did this 1 year before she started Castle.
Oh.
So this was 2008.
Yeah.
Castle started in 2009.
All right.
So
we find out
Shout
that
out.
she's actually an agent from Canada. I think that was or something like that. Or Bond was just guessing who she is.
right, and just kind of laying out who the boyfriend is.
Yeah.
And so much so that the necklace that Vesper was wearing in the first movie
Was presented.
Stana is actually wearing one just like it, and that just really pissed off Bond. Now Bond comes out and M asks him if he killed him, and he says no. And so two guys go in to get him, and M and Bond are talking, and M tells him that they found Green in the middle of the desert with bullet holes in his back and oil in his stomach.
Yeah.
So
Bond's like, huh, that sucks.
yep. But essentially, Bond finds out that Vesper only betrayed him because she thought somebody else's life was on the line, and that wasn't the case, and that she was tricked the whole time. And so he was able to forgive her.
Yeah. And that wraps up the movie. And so overall thoughts, this was not a good follow-up to Casino Royale for Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig's character felt a little bit out of balance in this movie. The movie was too quick. There was too many action scenes with no substance in it.
Maybe there just wasn't enough time for us to care about the other characters.
Yep.
Like, Green wasn't really that menacing other than he had a tantrum. Or,
Yep.
A temper. And that was only really in one scene when he tried to kill.
He was more
Camille.
irritated than anything, right?
Right. And like Camille was a good character. Like her and Bond never hooked up. She wasn't a crazy badass, but she still killed Medrano. And then Fields was just kind of there.
Yeah. Fields was a waste of a character. Camille was a lost opportunity to have her grow because this is the person after vengeance. So you would think from an agent she would have enough training to be ready for this, and we would have seen more. She really haven't had any action scene except really at the end. She was mainly a driver, or running. That's it. And so all the spotlight took from her were all to Bond, and that they should have shared these fight scenes. Like even Camille could have had her solo fight scene somewhere in this movie or some sort of way.
So maybe that's what's so difficult about this movie is we already know Bond, and we don't need to know more about Bond.
Right.
We want to see how Bond interacts with other people, and we want to see the people.
Right, because Bond. This is Bond back in the day, so I feel like he's not learning, and we're not learning with him because the movie doesn't want him to learn. They want him to just keep making mistakes and just show that. Well, Bond will eventually learn, but like, well, we learned that from the first one. So like, show us something different. This is supposed to be his moment with Camille to me, where this is someone I'm not gonna mess up like I did with Vesper. But the problem is, Camille wasn't really used for that.
Yeah, and like I said, they never got romantic, which is fine. But the only thing we know about Camille is that she wants Medrano dead, and why.
Right.
We don't know how she is as a person. We don't know who she is as a person.
Right.
It's like, it's just kind of one-dimensional.
Do you think it would have helped if they had a fight scene against each other?
No.
Nothing? Like, the fact that, like, he's in the way too much, and he's like, all right, I'm going to take you down right now, and then they find out that they're after the same goal, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, maybe it would have demonstrated that she was a skilled fighter, but we know that she's not. Like,
Right. Mathis was really he was a throwaway. He was not utilized very well. He could have been saved up for another moment, when it was important. Like, Mathis was a character that I wish got carried over and then he died in some way, but they threw him off. Felix was still a plot device with the CIA that it was just there to be there. There's a lot of be there stuff, but let's go ahead and break down a little bit more. How do we feel about Daniel Craig in this film? Like we said before, still not feel like he hasn't learned anything. Straight to the point of stuff. It took 4 deaths to finally realize that I care, per se. He really got lucky, right? Like, everything seemed Deus Ex Machina with this. He kills Mr. Slate, right? And then he happens to get the briefcase, which happens to cause him to run into Camille, right? Which is basically his whole, how he was able to figure everything out. So either the movie was written in a way to where no matter what, he was going to figure it out with the help of other people. And so whatever he did, it didn't matter. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Had he actually, like in Casino Royale, he was actually like tracking people and trying to ID stuff and figure stuff out. And this one, it was all just kind of handed to him.
Right. I agree with that. 100%. Bond girl, Camille.
Clamazel.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
She's going to be one of those Bond girls that's going to be easily forgettable because they didn't do anything for her. Now, there's a lot of forgettable Bond girls in this whole series of these 24 films, or 25 now, with No Time to Die coming soon. But it's sad because this was her chance to have a really good moment. And the fact that now Vesper, the girl that didn't really know any training at all, has a better spotlight moment than her. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, but they took the time to develop that relationship.
They did. That's very true. And they didn't do that for her in this one.
Right.
And she looked great for the part. She looks like, you look like a badass for a Bond girl, because during information, she said one of her inspiration was Michelle Yeoh's character from Tomorrow Never Dies. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So we might see some stuff, but it just never happened. So it's more like, what was the training for? Just to make her like look fit, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. And she was too mysterious for her own good, because when we finally found out what her goal is, I feel like you could have told us a long time ago. She's a straight arrow. You could have just said, I'm after the general.
Right.
You could have said that at the boat. You could have said that on the plane. You could have said that in many other ways. You could have said it at a party. I don't care. There was more opportunity for that. And then that could have changed that movie up. So, villain, Dominic Green. That really right there. Let me put it like this. There's a lot of villains in the series that were just useless, but Dominic Green is up there in my top like 2.
Yeah, he's just an not even an eco-terrorist. He's a wannabe, or not even a wannabe. Like, he's just a liar.
Yeah.
That's it. He's
right.
a liar and an extortionist.
He didn't do anything like most villains in the Bond series. If they don't have the physical strength to deal with them, it was the mental, right? They would use that to like, okay, maybe I can outsmart you by doing A, B, and C. But he didn't even do that. It was more of like, I have my A, but he keeps ruining it, so I have to start over again. And again, and again. And the fact that he needed help. Like, he was so weak that he needed some other characters to help him. He needed Jaws. And he didn't have a Jaws.
Right.
If he had a Jaws, maybe this would have helped out a little bit more. And so, but sadly enough, though, we have a Bond girl and a Bond villain that were just useless because they were too focused on trying to make Bond such a badass, as like you said, we already know. So give us these other characters.
Right.
And so, but this is a very low film. Of course, no gadgets. That's why we didn't have a Q branch in this one. They totally ignored that.
Even cars.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny in these notes, you didn't even care what kind of car they were.
He had an Aston Martin at the beginning. I couldn't even tell you if it was a Vanquish. Like, I mean, it's cool chase scene, but they don't like really show you the car that well, right? So
yeah, this movie is almost close to the bottom with Octopussy with me.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, just wasn't nothing there, and it's sad because you're coming off a reboot and following up Casino Royale, which left a really good mark, and it's like, okay, let's get this party started, and it just buff, and to me too, I guess, like, would you say compared to like From Russia with Love, was that kind of like a big 180 turn, like coming from Dr. No to that, or do you feel like, no, that was a good pace, I just didn't like From Russia with Love?
Maybe not as slow as From Russia with Love.
You know what? What about?
But just not a lot of substance to what we were watching.
I was gonna say, what about from Letter That Died to Man with the Golden Gun? Would you?
Yeah, I would put it more along those lines.
Okay. How do you feel overall? Would you put that in your very bottom list?
Yeah, it's really disappointing. Especially coming off the high of Casino Royale, and even them tying it to that, it's kind of like, what happened?
I actually would put the music in the intro in the bottom too. That was just,
oh yeah,
it's so forgettable, and its use, it was pointless, and so. But what are your thoughts? All you have to do is let us know in the comment below of the show that you're listening on. But remember, on Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter, all you have to do is type in @ProgramN or @GameBossProgram, the whole thing, and you'll find us. On Facebook, just @GameBossProgram. But what is your thoughts about the movie? Were you one of the people that actually like Quantum of Solace? If you did, let us know and tell us why. Are you excited about Casino? The next movie we're going to do, which is going to be Skyfall. That's the next one for us. How'd you feel about the Bond villain and the Bond girl? Was there something there that we didn't know? What is Quantum of Solace? You tell us what it is, because we don't really know what it means. But remember to always leave a comment. If you enjoyed the show, we're part of the network of gaming and variety shows that's in Game Boss Program. So, follow, subscribe, leave comments once again. It helps us get better, basically. And if we're doing bad, tell us so we can work on that too. Travis, anything that you want to add?
Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah, and remember, if you want to find me personally though on Twitter, it's RetroAmp07. Mr. Travis Hanna doesn't have a Twitter, and so but if you have anything you want to say to him, you can hit me up on the Facebook, and I would be happy to tell him. But we're very excited because even though the Daniel Craig's only has 4 movies, well 5, including when we do our final pre-episode of No Time to Die, that's not over. We have a lot more stuff. We got to get through our top. So if you want to get a little ahead of the game, go listen to our episode 0, where you get to hear all our top 5 of our Bond girl, Bond villain, James Bond. Because when we give our final one, it's gonna be a tough talk, but it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be fun. So with that, we'll catch you on our next mission.
Ba-da, ba-da.